In the last 2 years, brain peptides have gone from obscure research molecules to one of the biggest trends in biohacking. People are using them for focus, for anxiety, for burnout, even to try to prevent dementia, or maybe even to try to treat dementia. And depending on who you listen to, they're either the future of brain health, or they might just be expensive and useless, or maybe they're even risky hype. Today, more than 50 million people worldwide suffer from dementia. And by 2050, just 25 years from now, that number is expected to triple. Now, picture that's like half of the US population if you were to condense it all into the US. And it's like picture some zombie apocalypse movie where it's like half the population in the US is dementia or zombie state, like crazy. And just in the United States currently, 1 in 9 adults over the age of 65 actually have full-blown Alzheimer's disease. So this question about peptides is super important. Which is it? The future of brain health or expensive or risky hype? And because if you or someone you love is worried about cognitive decline or just a foggy brain that's not working right, this is not a small question. And in this video, I'm going to show you what brain peptides actually are, why they suddenly exploded in popularity, and what the real science says without the hype and without the fear. So let's start with why you're suddenly hearing about these everywhere. Mild cognitive impairment or pre-dementia and dementia actually affects about 20% of adults over the age of 65. And research suggests up to 50% of dementia risk may be influenced by lifestyle and metabolic factors. Now, my experience actually suggests that that number is closer to 95%. But that can be another discussion. And that should create a powerful psychological shift. You may no longer believe cognitive decline is completely inevitable, which it's not. But you also feel like traditional medicine has very few tools to offer, and rightly so, because frankly, Namenda or Aricept, or an IV drug that can cause brain bleeds, is not exactly a reassuring future for those who are actually diagnosed with full-blown dementia. So naturally, people start searching, Googling, ChatGPT, and God knows searching online can result in a lot of interesting rabbit holes. Which one do you follow? And at the same time, the brain health and nootropics market is expected to exceed $15 billion within the next decade. And when fear meets a rapidly growing industry, new trends spread very quickly. And social media, frankly, just spreads that growth like a wildfire, and not always in a good way. Sometimes in a good way, but not always. And brain peptides sit exactly at that intersection of fear and hope, and frankly, emerging science. But to understand the hype, it would first be wise to understand what peptides actually are. Peptides are short chains of amino acids. The body actually produces thousands of them every day, probably tens of thousands. Scientists have actually identified more than 7,000 peptides in the human body that act as signaling molecules. They are how your cells communicate with each other. Think of peptides as text messages between cells. They tell the cells when to repair, when to grow, when to reduce inflammation, when to create inflammation, when to adapt to stress, and even when to make new connections. For example, insulin is a peptide. Many modern medications are peptide-based. There are already more than 80 peptide drugs approved worldwide, with hundreds more in the developmental pipeline. So peptides are not just fringe science. Know that, and should be comforted by that fact. What is new is the growing interest by the layperson in peptides that interact with the brain specifically. Now, your brain is only about 2% of your total body weight, but it uses 20% of your total energy. And the brain is constantly under attack from 3 major forces of aging. Number 1, neuroinflammation. Number 2, mitochondrial decline. And number 3, reduced neuroplasticity. Now, after the age of 40, brain volume shrinks by about 5% per decade, which is kind of scary. It kind of scares me. Mitochondrial function, meanwhile, also declines gradually with age, often as much as 10% per decade or 1% per year. So let's just do a little math. for an average 70-year-old, that equals a 70% mitochondrial or energy decline. Now, how would you feel with that kind of decline? This matters because the brain is constantly trying to repair itself. It is not a static organ. It is always adapting in real time. This is why the researchers became interested in peptides that may support the brain's natural repair signals. But here's where the internet creates confusion. The internet talks about brain peptides as if they are one thing. They are not. And this is the most important takeaway from this video. Brain peptides fall into, or at least I'm going to put them into 4 broad functional categories. And this is the mental gap that most people never get or have not gotten thus far. Category 1 is the focus and performance peptides. And I think of these for motivation, attention, mental clarity. Category 2, stress and anxiety peptides. Now, these should be explored for calming the nervous system and improving emotional resilience. Category number 3, recovery and repair peptides. These are studied for brain injury, burnout, neuroinflammation. And then there's category number 4, neurodegeneration and aging peptides, perhaps considered for cognitive decline and dementia risks. When all of these get lumped together online, confusion definitely explodes. Some people think these are miracle cures. Others assume the entire field must be hype. Neither is accurate. So do they actually work? And my honest answer is nuanced. Well, I know you want me to say, do this peptide for that condition or for this symptom. The wiser answer is never that simple. And I'm not going to go on here and just spout to the world that it is that simple. Some of the most well-known brain peptides have been studied since the 1980s, probably since before then, and have decades of clinical use, mostly out of Europe and Asia. Russia specifically, actually. Others are still in early research because we're discovering new peptides all the time. So there's these peptides that have been around for many decades, and then others that are very, very new. So the evidence quality varies widely depending on the peptide and the condition. So again, you can't just categorize peptides as good or bad, as effective or not, or expensive or not helpful. So as a whole, brain peptides is not a miracle category. And yet it is also not snake oil either. This is a real and growing area of neuroscience surrounded by lots of misunderstanding and a lot of social media hype. I'm not going to say I haven't been part of that. Let's just say this is a real and growing area of neuroscience surrounded by lots of misunderstanding and social media hype. But the number one biggest question people have is not about effectiveness. But the number one biggest question people actually have is not about effectiveness. It is about safety. Your brain contains about 80, 90 billion neurons forming trillions of connections. So when people ask whether brain peptides are safe, that is a very reasonable and great question. Are they safe long-term? Could they cause harm? Who should absolutely not use them? And that's what I'll cover in the next video, where I'll talk about safety, risks, and the biggest mistakes people make when experimenting with brain peptides, because this is the part that most people skip. And it is the most important. It should be your foundational question, really. So if this topic matters to you or your family or friends, make sure you subscribe so that you do not miss part 2, which will be another short and easy to digest video. And there will be a part 3 that I have a feeling you'll definitely want to stay tuned for. I'm Dr. 𝗖𝗎 𝗏. Hope you enjoyed this video.